Imagine for me, if you will, that you are the product planner in a car company and the boss has just called you and your team in because he wants to create a new model for the brand. And you're all sat around the table spitballing ideas. And you say, well, I think what we need is a style statement, so therefore a coupe is the answer. But then one of your colleagues says, yeah, but hang on a second, that's impractical, it needs to have 4 doors. And then another colleague says, well, hang on, the crossovers, that's what everyone's buying at the moment, so it needs to be a crossover. And then somebody else says, well, electric crossovers are all the rage, so shouldn't it be powered by an electric motor? But then somebody else says, yeah, but people get worried about electric cars, and therefore maybe a hybrid would be better, or to have some form of engine in it. And the boss stands up and says, yes, let's just do all of that. And if you did, this would be the result. Welcome to this week's new car review. Welcome to the Mazda MX-30 R-EV. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. Now, before I start on this week's road test review of the Mazda MX-30 R-EV, I need to ask a little favour. As you've probably seen, I have some subscribers, but I would like an awful lot more. So if you're not already a subscriber to the House of Cars channel, would you please consider becoming one? Tell your friends about it as well, they might want to subscribe too. Once you have subscribed, press the bell button down below, because that's the way you get notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. And of course, once you've watched it, if you enjoy it, make sure that you give it a little thumbs up and don't forget to leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, the Mazda MX-30 is not a new car. It was launched a few years back and I road tested it back then for Auto EV because it was launched as a full battery electric vehicle. Mazda's first battery electric vehicle to hit the mainstream. And it's a great little car, but it's not without one glaring fly in its lovely Mazda-ness ointment. That is the fact that it can only do 125 miles. Range, and that is the official figure. The reality is closer to 100 miles on a full charge. Now, there's a reason for that. There is method in Mazda's madness, and what they say is they call it right sizing, because they did research and said the majority of Mazda owners only drive 26 miles a day on average. So why are they lugging around a big heavy battery with too much capacity that they don't need to use when a small battery is much lighter and easier to package in the car? Well, that works to a certain extent, obviously, because that's taking into account the average Mazda driver. But not everyone's the average Mazda driver. And somebody like myself, for instance, whilst I do on a daily basis a small amount of miles, every other month I drive to Scotland to see my mum and my son who live up there, which is a 700-mile round trip before we take into account the mileage that I drive when I'm up there. So a Mazda MX-30 is ruled out for me because, you know, having to charge that amount of times on that trip is a terrible inconvenience. But Mazda might have come up with a solution, and it's quite a clever one, because remember, if you watched my Subaru Crosstrek review a few weeks back, and if you haven't, go back and watch it, I said that Mazda were one of these manufacturers that don't tend to follow convention. They don't follow the herd. They do things their own way. And by golly, have they done things their way with this version of the MX-30. However, before I start, let me give you a brief snapshot about what the MX-30 R-EV is all about. So the MX-30 R-EV is a plug-in hybrid version of its battery electric vehicle sister, the regular MX-30. As well as featuring a 17.8 kilowatt-hour battery, the car also features an 830cc rotary engine that provides charge for the battery. Mazda claim the car is now capable of a range of over 400 miles rather than the 125 miles you get from the pure electric MX-30. It's also more powerful than the electric model with a total output of 170 PS. And prices start from £31,500 and rise to just under £36,000, making it more expensive than the pure EV MX-30. So all the good bits of the MX-30 remain, but now with greater usability, with it being a plug-in hybrid, and therefore banishing all the negatives that some people may have about an electric car. So is this the car that we've all been waiting for? Time to find out in this week's new car review. Right, let's start with how it looks, because it's quite a unique little car, and we're going to go on to the best bits about it slightly further on. But I want to start with the front of the car, which is very Mazda-like. Now, I love Mazda. I think they're a great company. Not only do they make great cars, I love the way they think a bit outside the box. And they've got this style thing going on at the moment where a lot of the cars, you know, I've got this thing about not making cars look too much, as I say, that Russian doll kind of styling that some manufacturers do, each one having its own unique appearance, but still tying it in with the rest of the family to make it look like it belongs within that same range. And I think the MX-30 does a great job of that. It's very Mazda-like at the front. You've got this lovely negative space here between sort of like the leading edges, sort of like where the bonnet is, and then also the top of the bumper, if you like. These lovely projector headlamps there that you can almost look almost eagle-eyed. And as I say, then there's the top of the car, the front of the car just cowls round the top of that grille. There's negative space in there, which is really, really nice. It looks like a little crossover, doesn't it? Because you get that black plastic cladding, which is round all the car. And of course, that's quite practical in terms of, you know, bashing up against things or things banging into it. And it does sit a little bit higher than a conventional Super Mini. But this is far from a conventional car, as you'll see as we go around it. So it makes getting in and out of the car a bit easier, but we'll chat about that later on. You've got your Mazda grille in there, big Mazda badge right in there. Look at it, great big badge in there. And then of course you've got the parking sensors. They seem quite high. They're all up here, look, they're not down there. And then of course you get a little bit of cooling there for the engine. And then more cooling down there, and then of course there you've got your radar sensor for the guided cruise control at the front. A little flash of chrome there just to match with the badge. But yeah, a really handsome little car, just a really distinctive little car, but very, very Mazda, isn't it? Now it's this side profile where you're going to start to see the real quirkiness come out. Just before we get there, let me tell you a couple of things. How can you differentiate it from the regular electric MX-30? By this badge here, that's all, the little rotary piston, if you like. Because they don't really have pistons as such. I shouldn't have said rotary piston, it's a rotor, a little triangular rotor. I'll explain about that in the technical section. But that little badge there, that's the only way you can tell that this is the R-EV and not the EV, as it were. All models, 3 trim levels, which we'll get onto later, get 18-inch wheels. Just different designs depending obviously on the car. And as I say, look at the black plastic cladding that goes down there. You have the option of a 2-tone finish. I quite like it. I love this colour. It's like a silvery white pearlescent. It's really nice. But then of course it's then contrasted with this grey metallic pillar, this roof rail and rear pillar, and then a gloss black roof with gloss black mirrors. That's an optional extra. It's £1,500 at time of filming to have this duotone finish. But I do quite like it. It works in certain colours, maybe not so much in others. Right, now this is the bit that's different here. 4 doors, yes. 1 door there, back door there. Look at that. How clever is that? Now Mazda have done this before on the RX-8. It's very similar to what BMW did in the i3 as well, but that came out after the RX-8. Now they call it freestyle doors. I used to call it suicide doors, but obviously that's probably not the best use of word in fairness. But it's really interesting because there's no centre B pillar at all. That's it, you know, that's the space. And if you're getting in and out of the car in terms of the front, let me just show you. That door opens almost in 90 degrees to that car. So again, if you have limited mobility or you're getting in and out of a wheelchair, getting into the car, that's perfect. And see, because it sits that slightly higher, it's easy just to get your bum on the seat and swing your legs in. What a great idea. That door is really good. Now, people have different thoughts on this. I love it. My family's not so sure about it. My wife was a bit concerned with the fact that you can't open the rear door unless the front one's open. And my daughter at first felt a little bit enclosed in the back. Now I'll show you the practicality bit in a little bit later on. But actually when she got used to it, she quite liked it. She quite liked being in there. But I think that's great. As I say, you don't have to go with a 2-door car. Because now, you know, in the limited, you know, sort of like access a 2-door car brings, because you've got that extra door there. How clever is that? The downside is the windows. And you'll see that when we're inside it because you get two separate windows, which are not particularly big. Now, in terms of safety, your strengthening is all in there, so you've got no worry about in terms of side impact. The car gets a really high safety record in terms of from Euro NCAP. Not that they know much about what they're talking about, in fairness, because they just say throw a load of electronics on it and give it as many stars as you want. But it is a very safe wee car in terms of that, you know, sort of like the central body structure, so you don't need to worry about it. Right, as I said, you've got this contrasting two-tone in this particular one, but it sits quite high, as I say. Look at how sort of like tall that wheel arch is in comparison. That's waist height to me. I know I'm a shorty, but even so. I love this little bit here. You get this little strip of sort of like satin chrome along the back, which is Mazda in it, and you get one of the two flaps in it because it's a plug-in hybrid. You can charge this car up. It's a really clever system the car's got, but we'll talk about it a bit later on. But look, there's your coupe sort of like side of it, but also crossover, but practicality of 4 doors. It's the best of everything. And then you get to the back of it. Look at it, it's great. Look at these rocket thruster lights here. I love these that just come out, these kind of cylindrical rear lights that go into the bodywork there, and another little bit there. I love that. And this bumper, he like sticks out like a, you know, a spoilt child's bottom lip. I love that. It's like, fun enough. Want to go home. Love that. I think it looks really, really quirky. Big Mazda badge there, rear wash wipe, roof spoiler integrated brake light, as you'd expect. Like the little badge on the side, there's just one badge at the back that says Sky Active R-EV at the back, and that's the other way you can tell that it obviously, apart from the fact obviously it's got twin filler caps. That's the other way you can tell obviously that's the R-EV model. Parking sensors along the back bumper. There is a reverse camera tucked up underneath there, and then as I say, more black plastic cladding at the bottom. I love it. I think it's just quirky and just fun. And as I say, there's lots of practicalities with the way that the car is styled, but not everyone's like me. Not everyone's going to love it. What do you think? Do you love it? Let me know in the comment section down below. However, my OCD has just kicked in, because look at the filler cap on this side with its circular flap. Yet on this side, the flap is a big square one. Why is it not the same, Mazda? Why did you not do the same style of flap, the same shape of flap? That really bugs me. Naughty Mazda, naughty. Now, like I say, it's an odd little car if you were trying to think about where you're going to pigeonhole this and where we're going to talk about competition, which we'll also get onto later. It is quite an odd little car, but it is a small crossover, so therefore it needs to be relatively practical, and it is. You have a boot space of 355 litres in there. If you option up the Bose sound system, then that drops to 332 litres. If you knock down the standard split 60-40, then that takes total capacity up to 1,157 litres, and obviously with the Bose it's 1,130 something. So that's your boot sizes there. So it depends if you like your tunes or not as to whether or not you should go for the Bose sound system, but it will eat into the boot space by about 20 litres or so. Now you'll see this bag here. This is charging cable, and it also has a 3-pin plug on it, and I will talk about that in the technical section, but you don't have to carry that around with you, in fairness. But I'm going to leave it there. Well, in fact, no, I'm going to take it out for a second while I show you the suitcases. So let's do the suitcase test, shall we? So here's our large suitcase. If I pop that in up at the back there against the back seats, that works. Here's our medium one. That one can go in there with its wheels just in there. Let's have a look at a carry-on here. Can it sit that way up? No, it can't, so it has to go that way, which means that's our space in terms of suitcases, but there's extra space there. Look at that for the rucksack that can go in there. Oh, and we can still get that cable bag in there. So there you go, so that's okay, in fairness. That's an all right sort of like size of boot, I think. And obviously in terms of buggies or, you know, pushchairs, wheelchairs, as I say, I think that's probably going to be ample enough. It's not too bad a height, you know, in terms of getting stuff into the boot. There's not much of a drop between the boot sill and the boot floor either. There's no storage underneath the boot floor, so don't go looking for some extra storage in there. There's none of that. There's no spare wheel with the car either. You've just got that tyre inflation stuff, so if you're a spare wheel fan, you don't get it with the MX-30. But in terms of boot space, I don't think that's too bad, considering the size of the car and the style of the car as well. Right, let me show you how you get in the back of this. Now, it is actually easier on the passenger side, and I'll explain why in a wee second, okay? But I'm going to do it on the driver's side, so you can film across and you can see what it's like with my driving position, what it's like in the back. Yeah? Okay, right. So you open the front door. You've got to open the front door before you can open that back one, all right? Now, on this one, there is a button on the back here. Just takes time. So you can do that, and then slide that a little bit further forward to get in, okay? There we are. And then, of course, you shut that back door. Now, the reason why it's easier on that side is because it's just a pull tab. With this one, with the electric memory, sorry, the electrics, the problem then is you never get back to the driver's exact driving position, really. Okay, so it's much easier with that one with a pull tab, and it slides it forward mechanically, then returns back to where it was. Right, what's space like in the back? Right, well, the first thing that you find is, especially for me, is the floor is you pushed up, your legs are really pushed up. Can you see that? And as I say, I'm hoping that was my driving position. So if it was, the legroom's okay, it's all right. And I've got headroom, but I wouldn't want to be much taller. I mean, I'm 5'8", so, you know, it's okay for me, but I wouldn't want to be much taller in the back here. The downside is there is a slight feeling of claustrophobia because you've got these tiny little windows. So one on the rear freestyle door, and then this little quarter light there. So it's not ideal from that point of view. However, once you're in, and if we're talking of children or smaller adults like me, as long as it's not a big basketball player driving, it's all right, you know. Funnily enough, my daughter's been in the back of this car all this week, and she's been saying to me a couple of times that when she first got in it, she went, I don't like it. But I'd say by the second or third time, she was like, I really like this. I really like how cosy I feel in the back. So, yeah, it depends obviously how they feel, but there's certainly enough space. She's 10, which is quite tall for a 10-year-old, but, you know, she fits in the back quite nicely. And with that floor being raised up a little bit, you know, she can get her feet on the floor, so she's no problems. So, once you're in, what's it like? Well, as I say, it's quite cosy, to use Katie's words. That's what she says. There is a little fold-down armrest here, with 2 cup holders, so that is your storage away from a mat pocket on the passenger seat. Why isn't there one in the back of the driver's seat? Can somebody let me know why Japanese manufacturers, a lot of them, don't put mat pockets on the backs of driver's seats? Why is that? I genuinely don't know. There isn't any connectivity either. There's no USB-C ports here, which I find odd as well. I thought there might have just been one at the back of that console, but there isn't. But there you go, so there isn't any connectivity. But the back doors have a tiny little, they've got a cup holder, a bottle holder if you like, and a tiny little tray, which would be enough for, I don't know, something to get lost in, you know, when you're looking for it in the house and it's in there. But that's it, and then the 2 cup holders here. So as long as you view it as a super mini size of car or a coupe style of car, then you're not going to be disappointed with rear room. It's fine for small children or smaller adults to do even a reasonable journey. Katie said the other day she'd quite fancy going to Scotland in the car, which is, you know, which would be great. I'd love to do a trip to see how really well it does on a long trip like that. But yeah, she said that actually when she's in, she feels quite cosy and thing. But the downside, as I say, is you do feel a bit more claustrophobic because of the lack of windows in the back. So don't expect too much. If you've got super mini or coupe in your mind, that's what you're looking at in the back here. The one thing I will say is if you are loading your children into the back of the MX-30, at least if you're doing it from this side, 2 things. As I say, remember, it's not that electronic switch, it's that pull tab there. So you pull it, it's a lot quicker to get them in and out of the back there. And obviously in the UK, this is curbside, so your kids aren't getting in and out of the car on the road. So there is a wee bit, you know, there is a bit of thought gone into that, I think. Right, up front is brilliant. This is an absolute masterpiece of an interior, I think. I've loved it, you know, when I saw it a few years back when I did the first road test, the electric one, and I still love it today. There's loads of stuff to talk to you about and why this is such a great interior. Let me turn the car on. Now you might hear the engine kicking at some point, but just bear that one. Oh, hang on. Turn that volume down. Right. There's 2 things I love about it. I love the design of it, and I love the materials that they've used, okay? And then the more and more you sit in it, the more and more you drive the car, the more you start to appreciate some of the little qualities that they've engineered into it, the design features. My wife got in the car the other day and just she just said, this feels special, you know, just the quality of the material. She said, really like this floating console area here. And this is cork round here. Now, why is it cork? Well, because in the 1920s, Mazda was a cork manufacturer. There you go. So isn't that a nice nod to the heritage? So as well as being down here, and I'll put some B-roll up of it, as well as being down there and underneath there, which is nice because it acts as a sound deadening. It's also something that's a bit different, and it's made from recycled wine stoppers. So there's a sustainability message with it as well. So, and I love that. That's great. So it deadens the sound. It's also quite grippy, so things don't fly around in it. So in terms of your storage, you're putting sunglasses in there or your phone, it's not sliding around, so that's great. But then you've got this lovely sort of like matte finish leatherette on the top, this soft touch. You know, it's got squidgy, it's got bounce back to it, which is absolutely lovely. It just feels good. And then the tops of the doors are done in recycled plastic bottle tops, and the same with the door cards. You've then got further bits of cork on the inside of the door handle, so as you pull the door shut, your hand's gripping around cork. Just love it. Just thoughtful little bits of detail that Mazda have done that just work for me. I need to mention the screen that's on top of the dashboard here, because it's not a touch screen. And that is a good thing in some respects. You've got this rotary controller here with physical buttons around it. So if you go to the home page, which is there, and you'll see that as I'm scrolling, it's just got menus up and down there. So it's just so easy to use. So from the driver's seat, as you're driving along, with your arm raised in there, that's all you're doing. It's just up and down like that. And there's not a plethora of menus, you know. You can go in there to adjust your safety settings. You know, drive. Okay, it's a few menus deep, yeah, but it's not. You're not constantly doing. You're not having to do this while you're reaching across. You're just using this. You're just, you know, rolling it round as you're driving along, and it's in the line of sight as well. Look at that. It's right in my line of sight, but it's not tall enough that it's interrupting the base of the windscreen. Just a great place for it. Well done, Mazda. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard, but it's not wireless, it's wired. That's maybe the only downside. And there's no place for a wireless charging pad for your mobile. But if you've got to plug it in to use CarPlay, then it's going to charge anyway. But you've got USB ports underneath here for it. So your mobile's tucked away underneath there out of sight anyway. But that's maybe the only downside. It's not wireless. And there's no, as I say, there's no wireless charging pad for it either. You've got obviously navigation inbuilt into the car as well. Which is good, and again you can use the rotary controller just to, you know, zoom in or zoom out of the maps if you're using the inherent navigation system. There's Bluetooth streaming as well, there's DAB radio as you expect, and it's all controlled from there via this rotary dial. And then you've got 4 shortcut buttons around it. So you've got home, return, nav and media, and then you've got an actual physical volume control here with track search as well as track search and volume on the steering wheel. Bliss, absolute bliss. The other thing I love about it is this steering wheel. This is one of my favourite steering wheels on a car that's in production. And I know you might laugh at that, but I'll tell you what I love about it. First of all, it's round. None of this square malarkey or flat bottom. It's just a pleasingly round wheel. And it reminds me of the old 1970s Japanese sports cars, you know, like the Mazda RX-7, the Datsun 240Z, you know, Toyota Celica, which is this thin-rimmed, round steering wheel, 3 simple spokes and a round boss in the middle. Just love it. Look at the design of that. But it still has physical buttons on it. You know, you've got volume, track search, cruise control, speed limit, Bluetooth, and the button to change your dashboard view. All just there. None of this big, and they're all physical buttons, and they're all nice to the touch. That's the other thing. The quality of everything just feels good, you know? It's proper buttons that press and click, and oh, I love it. Ugh. Right, so that's the other thing. The seats are nice, they're comfortable. I find them a tiny little bit narrow in the back for me. That's the only thing I will say. On a longer, I mean, they're quite supportive. They've got enough support there. There's no adjustment in terms of length of squab. It's all right. It's probably a wee bit more would be nice, but it's not horrific. It's all right. But they are electrically adjustable on the driver's side in this model. So that's good. And as I say, I'd like to do a really long journey in the car to see how I feel after you know, 4 or 5 hours behind the wheel of the car. But I just find them a tiny bit narrow in the back for me. They're just pinching me just down the side of my back a little bit. But that's all I'm going to say. I'm not the slimmest man in the world, in fairness. What else have we got to talk about? This other screen here, which is a touch screen, or is it? Because what you have is a touch screen for your heating and ventilation controls. So touching that adjusts your temperature up and down. But for some brilliantly odd reason, Mazda also fit physical controls down the side. Exactly the same. So there's your temperature control there. There's your top vents for your heating your windscreen. Auto climate, on and off, heated rear screen, fan speed there. So it duplicates what it does on the screen here. The only thing that's on the touch screen that isn't there is your heated seats if they're fitted to this car. And you've got 3-stage heated seats. It's just, what a thoughtful, who thought of this? That's what I mean, isn't it just well thought out? Driver's display is really nice, very simple in its layout. Effectively, you have 3 dials. You've got one on the left, which is your power meter. You've got a speedometer in the middle, and then over on the right-hand side, you've got one dial that shows you 2 bits of information. It's the fuel gauge and the battery level gauge. I'm going to talk about that when we go into the technical section, how it all works. But basically, you have a battery meter, and then obviously around the side of the speedo, you've got various bits of information. So you've got total range, battery range, and then the odometer of the car. You've got a battery state of charge and a percentage, outside temperature, and then other little bits of information. You can change that if you want to. So you can change it, where is it? It says view from memory. He says, where the bloody hell is it? I was playing with it earlier. That's your speed limit warning, that's your cruise control there. Cancel, set, view. You can, I thought it said, oh, info. I'm thinking of another car I've got. There we go, info, that one there. And this tells you, this changes, because this is a middle display as a screen. So you can either have it as the big speedo, like I said, or you can have it where it's got a trip meter in the middle, it's showing your average MPG and your electric MPG, if you will, or you've got it just with a big numerical speed at the top, and then your safety, you know, your lane keep assist type of view there. So that you can change that. It's not hugely configurable, and you can't throw the navigation from the screen into there, you know, so you can't have that. It does have a head-up display, however, on this model as well, which is nice. You do get head-up display on the car, which is good. So that's that. Right, can't believe I didn't see that. New specs, by the way. That's probably why I'm getting used to them. Storage underneath here, which, as I say, this cork lined here. You've got 2 cup holders behind this console here. So water bottle and coffee flask in there. If you want to cover them up, you can, with 2 little flaps of cork. Great. And they're just out your way, and they sit, because that sits higher up and that's lower, they're not in your way of your arm. You know, if you were moving across the gear stick, you're not hitting your water bottle or whatever. Great. Nice, proper automatic. Again, Liz said the other day, she's, I like the fact it's this chunky big, you know, sort of like, rather than buttons of that, it's this chunky gear stick you've got. You've got the mode button there, which I'll talk about when we're driving it. Electric park brake, a favourite button, and auto hold. And then underneath here, he says, oh, you can extend that armrest forward. That's it there. You've also got a cubby box in there, which is lined with carpet. So things don't rattle around. That pleases me no end. Your door bins aren't lined. They are plastic in the bottom, but they're quite thick plastic, so things don't, you know, they don't scratch around. It doesn't feel cheap when you put your hand there. And you've got a sunglasses holder at the top there. Right, love this interior. Love, love, love it. I really do. I love the driving position. Oh, that's what I didn't take. The driving position. Whilst the seat, as I say, I'm still getting used to. The driving position is superb. The only downside with the styling is if you're looking over your shoulder, that that rear 3/4 view, you know, you over the shoulder view, because of the thick rear pillar and the small windows, you've got to watch that. But otherwise, you know, you get a nice view out of the car. As I say, the screen doesn't interrupt your view. That screen's brilliant, and it's really nice. It's really crisp, the graphics on it, and the font that they use as well. And as I say, you've got, there's your door ajar warning. That's fine. And as I say, just scrolling down it, it's so simple. Now obviously if you're using Apple CarPlay, that is primarily designed to be used with a touch screen, touching your icons, whereas this obviously you're going to scroll across them. So maybe that is one wee downside, in fairness, to having that wheel. But if you're using the generic inbuilt system, that's superb. I love the steering wheel, I love the materials, I love the message of sustainability, I love the interior. It's brilliant. You might have guessed that. Now this is where things get quite technical, okay? So bear with me on this. If this bores you, you're just interested in sort of like, you know, what the car's like to drive, skip ahead to the next chapter. But I'd urge you to stick with me on this because this is quite an interesting car. If you're into cars, I think what Mazda have done here is quite interesting. So let's talk about the MX-30, the pure EV, the battery electric vehicle. That has a battery of 33 kilowatt hours, okay, which should give a range, a WLTP range of around about 125 miles on the combined cycle. But as we know, WLTP stuff means next to nothing to people. So in regular running, especially in colder months, what you're really looking at is around about 100 miles. Yeah, that's why it was getting a bit useless. Now, the reason why Mazda did this, and this is the only way I can sort of like show you this, is like this. This is a mobile phone, okay? An old one, but it's a mobile phone, okay? If you're using your mobile phone, yeah, just to make a couple of calls a day, send a couple of texts out, yeah, what is the point of also carrying around a big power bank like that? Because there's going to be more than enough in that to do what you need it to do. That's Mazda's argument for why it doesn't come with a big battery, okay? So that's what they've decided to do, is to get rid of that, okay? And just have what's in there. The problem then comes, obviously, as I say, you get an odd scenario where you need to go a bit further afield. Like as I say, as I'm driving to Scotland or whatever, or you go on holiday down to Cornwall or whatever, and you want to take your little, because let's be fair, you spent a lot of money on a car, you want to use it. The inconvenience of having to stop and charge 3 or 4 times on a journey is going to wear you down a little bit, okay? So what they've decided to do is this. They've halved the battery size. Well, roughly, it's 17.8 kilowatt hours the battery is in the car now. And that should give an electric only range of around about 50 miles, okay? 53 miles, I think, is the official figure on it. But Mazda do say if you're using it primarily within the city or the town, you might see more than 60 out of the car, okay? But let's just say 50 miles for argument's sake, yep? What you now have, however, is this, which is a rotary engine, which Mazda have always championed, especially more so for performance perhaps in the past. But here it's for economy, and there's a reason for that. A rotary engine doesn't use as much moving parts. It's a triangular sort of rotor that goes round the chamber rather than a pistons going up and down. Okay, so it's a smaller, it uses less moving parts, and therefore you can make it more compact and therefore lighter. It's 830 cc's, this unit, okay? But it doesn't power the wheels. There are 2 types of hybrid. There's a parallel hybrid, which is where you have an engine and electric motor that both combine to drive the wheels. Or you have this, which is a series hybrid. And a series hybrid, it's the electric motor that powers the wheels. And the engine acts as a generator to provide power to the battery, which then feeds the electric motor with its power. Does that make sense? That's effectively, this engine does not drive the front wheels of this car. The electric motor does. What this engine is designed to do is to charge the battery as you drive. Yeah? You can also plug it in. So it's a plug-in hybrid. So I hope that makes sense. You put fuel in it, you put petrol in it, as you do, hence the fuel caps. And that's what happens. The engine charges the battery, puts power into the battery, which then gives the motor its power, yeah? So effectively what Mazda have done is this, they've ditched that, and they've now done this. They've given us a much smaller, lighter, extra power pack in which we can go further or use our phones all day. Yeah? Capiche? Brilliant. Right, you charge it from a home wall box if you want. You can charge the battery up from your home wall box. So I've got a 7 kilowatt wall box, which most people will have. If you've got an electric car charge point, that's what you have. And you plug it in and it will go from 10 to 80%, sorry, 20 to 80%, Mazda say, I think it's in 2 hours. So if you're looking at a full charge, it's probably just under it's maybe about 4.5 hours to fully charge the battery up from absolute flat. You can also charge it on the move. So believe it or not, this is another thing with plug-in hybrids. hybrids, which is quite rare. This has a CCS charging port, so you can actually charge it off one of those ultra rapid chargers. Now obviously the amount of charge it will take is quite small, but even so, again, going from that 20 to 80%, they're saying from one of those chargers is only going to take around about half an hour, which is like it does in an electric car. So that's excellent. But of course, as I say, as you've got the engine running, it is charging, or you can have it where it charges the battery anyway. So you pretty much are getting the best of both worlds, in the sense that you've got the electric running of an electric car with a battery for when you just need it, you know, maybe for local jobs, but you can take it on longer journeys where you're not relying on public charging if you don't want to. The car will keep the battery level topped up and you just put petrol in it. And in terms of that, I mean, they quote something ridiculous in terms of miles per gallon, you know, I don't know, 270 odd miles per gallon. It's never going to do that. But I would say if you were looking at maybe around about the mid 40 mpgs, that's probably what you're going to get out of the car. So again, that's not too bad. And of course, when it comes down to the CO2 emissions, it's 24 grams per kilometre of CO2s that the car produces. It's a real win-win situation, I think, with this car. Right, normally when I do performance and handling, I've set off in the car. And, you know, I talk to you when I'm on the move. But I want to really show you how this system works. So I've started the car up, okay? So let's, so I'll just turn it off now. So start the car up, pressing the power button there. Engine doesn't come on, okay? So at this point, it is an electric car, all right? I've got a 51% battery, which has given me a range of 22 miles. But I've got a total range of 264 miles because that's taken into account the engine and the battery with the fuel level that's in the car, okay? Right, so back into drive. Let's go. So the car starts off and it's driving purely on the electric motor. As I say, remember, the engine does not drive the wheels, okay? The engine will come in at some point, but it does not drive the wheels. It provides power to the battery, which then gives its power to the electric motor. All right, so that's the difference. Just while we're going down this little lane, let me give you the brief figures on the car. As I say, they've increased the power of this car. It's 130 kilos heavier than the electric one, and which wasn't a particularly heavy car. That's just over 1,600 kilos, the electric car. So, you know, it's not this 2-ton behemoth that people think electric cars are. It's not. It's still quite a small, light car. Well, fairly light, you know, I mean, I appreciate it's no Lotus Elise. 130 kilograms heavier, 170 PS is what the motor produces now. That gives it a 0 to 60 time of 9.1 seconds. So look, it's not an MX-5, okay? It is not a sports car. It looks very coupe and sporty like, but it is not a performance orientated EV, and I like that. Maximum speed is actually limited to 87 miles an hour, believe it or not. Don't know why, but it is. Just not that you can do 87 miles an hour, officer, in the UK, but there you go, just in case you were thinking of it, you can. Well, I can't go any higher than that. Right, so out on the open road. So here we go. Electric car, electric motor, nothing else is in it. So I've got a power meter here telling me what power, you know, obviously there's power going to it. There may come a point where you will hear the engine kick. Well, you might not hear it. It's an odd little thing. The reason why it's odd is because, as I say, remember, this is not driving the wheels of the car. So it doesn't rise and fall with the revs, as you would expect. So as your throttle input doesn't alter the tone of the engine. It's a bit of an odd thing. What it sounds like in the most basic form I can let you know is if the aircon had a slightly noisy motor in it. That's all you can hear, is just slight thrumming in the background. As I say, it's almost like it's got a slightly noisy air conditioning motor, but it doesn't rise and fall, as I say, with your throttle application. So that's the thing that's slightly odd at first. Now at the moment, I'm in the normal drive mode. I've got a little rocker switch down to the right of the gear, the transmission lever here, that I can change the modes of the car in. Now if I can force, at the moment it's in normal, so the car will decide what it needs to do. If the battery level drops to about 43%, the engine starts and it starts to sort of like charge the battery. That's what it does. It starts to put power to the battery. It doesn't like it dropping below 40%. You can, however, force it to do what you want it to do. So you can dictate how much charge goes into it. Now there's this rocker switch here, so if I put it forward into charge, the engine is now on. You can't hear it, as I say, you won't be able to pick it up, but as I say, it's like the aircon's got slightly noisier. That's all it sounds like, yeah? And I've set it so that it gets to 100% charge. So that engine will now run until it charges that up to 100%. Okay, if you only wanted it to say give you, I don't know, 80% or 70%, you can go into a menu here and dictate what it gives you. That's it. Okay, if you've got enough, and there's a little light on here, so I've got this little symbol here where you've got the sort of like the shield, the rotor shield, the battery, and a little lightning bolt next to it that lets me know that everything's on and it's all charging up now. So that's what it tells me it's doing. Okay, I can also force it to drive on pure EV alone. So again, if you had it all charged up and you would say, let's say you're driving in and out of the town, if you're going in, if you lived in London or Birmingham or Glasgow, you've got those low emission zones. Obviously the car can drive, its emissions is well below that anyway, but you can force it to drive as an EV by pulling it back into the EV mode. So now, engine's off, everything's back here, and it is now driving as a pure electric car again. So the engine will not come on. Because they say it will run the battery down now. It's just brilliant. I mean, it really is removing all the dare I suggest, the fear and anxiety that a lot of people have about EVs. Unnecessarily so, in fairness, because you know they are actually very easy to live with. I've been doing it for the last 5 years. But this, if you were unsure, this is such a brilliant little car, you know, to just take away all of those fears that you might have. It really is. Right, let me talk about how the car drives, because I love the way the MX-30 drives. It's a torsion beam rear end suspension. You go, oh, that's a bit old-fashioned, Brian. How does it drive with that? Bloody brilliant is the answer to that question. It really does. It's got a great level of grip to it. It's got a really nice sort of like state of handling to it. As I say, it's not a sports car, but you know, as I say, nor should you expect it to be, but it is a Mazda, and therefore a Mazda is a very well engineered, very tidy handling car on the whole, and this is no different. It is really nice in terms of its ride quality as well. Not going any bigger than 18-inch wheels is probably a lot to do with that as well. But what you do have is a very nice compliancy in the ride quality. You know, whether or not it's around town or whether or not it's on these kind of B roads that are linking up the towns locally, where you maybe get those little undulations, you know, where there's been a bit of sinkage, and certainly around here you get it. But turning is nice, and say the steering wheel is such a nice wheel to hold. It's got a very positive amount of feedback from it. I really like the amount of feedback that it gives to you. The other nice thing as well is, whilst I'm saying that it's driving like an electric car, which it is, the pedal doesn't feel like a switch. You know, the throttle pedal. When you put your foot down, it does feel like you are doing that. It's not, you know, it's responding to your input. However, because you don't get that sort of like engine rev rise and fall, it just feels like a really good responsive EV. It's just brilliant. It's super. It really is. Now the brakes, you can adjust the brakes via, there's two paddles behind the steering wheel as you get on EVs as well, so there's brake regeneration. It's either off or you get level 1 or level 2. So 3 states, if you like, 3 states of tune, depending obviously on what you want. It's not truly one pedal, is it truly one pedal driving? I've just said that. Now let me just see if it brings the car up to an absolute dead stop. It's not aggressive, that's probably what I'm better off saying. No, it brings it up to a very, very small creep. So it's as good as you like, as you would want for one pedal driving. So there you go. The reason why I didn't really know is because I tend to take it off. I'm not a massive fan of the one pedal drive, and I like to drive the car. But there you go. If you do, like me, and you do want to drive the car, your movement from throttle across to brake is a really nice pivot of the foot. There's not a big step up in height or anything, it's just a really nice move across. Ergonomics are superb. And that's what I was saying about the rest of the cabin. You know, you've got an armrest here that just feels right, and if you're needing to use the screen, that rotary control is high enough up. You know, you're not reaching down here, you're not leaning across there and to use a touch screen. It's just a really nice little hand stretch away, and because it's up in your line of sight, it's dead easy to use. Is there a drawback with it? Well, as I said earlier, because of the styling, some of the visibility, your over-the-shoulder visibility is quite tight. So if I'm looking back when I've mounted that camera, the over-the-shoulder visibility is limited because of those tiny little porthole windows. So that is, yes, there is that drawback without doubt. But if you are, you know, if you get used to that, and you know, as I say, you're not going in at too many oddly angled junctions and things like that, you know, I'm struggling to really find a massive drawback with this car. I really am. It's such a great little car to drive. It's refined as well. You know, you don't hear that engine really kick in, and because it's not connected to the throttle pedal in the conventional sense, you know, you don't have that sort of like rise and fall of revs. You know, when it's there, as I say, it just sounds like your aircon is just that tiny little bit noisier. You know, you probably won't even really notice it, in fairness, if you're listening to the radio. There's a good suppression of wind noise, a good suppression of road noise, maybe a tiny little bit of tyre noise on harsher surfaces, but I wouldn't call it intrusive and I wouldn't call it disturbing from that point of view. So there is that, but otherwise what you're left with is, as I say, is a really pleasant car, which makes it even better the fact that you can now take this car on a longer journey, you know, without, dare I suggest, that fear of, you know, the electric range not being good enough. You've got the ability to take the car much further than you were before, without the inconvenience. I mean, obviously you could still drive it a long distance you were before, but there was the inconvenience. It's a great little car, this. It really is. More people need to take notice of this. And as I say, what I think Mazda have done with this, you know, with this new R-EV model, is just answer a huge amount of, you know, criticisms, if they were, with the pure battery electric one, with the you know, the sort of like the small range that it had. And what you're left with now is just a really nice, small, quirky coupe slash crossover that's actually really nice to drive, that gives you all the benefits, or mostly all the benefits of an electric vehicle when you want one to be there, you know, driving around town, short journeys, that type of thing, but with the ability now to do a much greater distance with the car. I'm struggling to fault it, I really am. It's lovely to drive, it's relatively fun to drive. Okay, it's not performance orientated, but as long as that's not your bag, then what you're left with is a really nice little car to drive. It's comfortable, it's well equipped, there's a massive sustainability message with it. It's roomy enough for two plus a couple of small kids in the back, as long as they don't mind, you know, sort of like those rear doors. It's just, it's really good. It's a great little car. It's a great little Mazda. And I love it. Now let's talk about pricing. You know, when people say about electric cars being more expensive, this is more expensive than the electric one. But then I suppose it's a more convenient car to use. So I suppose that's your trade-off, isn't it, in that sense? And you're not charging up as much with this particular car as you would be with the electric one. So yeah, you know, potato, potato. Right, 3 trim levels that you get. So again, excuse the iPad, because as well as the new specs, I'm getting old and I'm forgetting numbers. So you've got 3 trim levels. Prime line model kicks the range off at £31,495. Okay, still a well-equipped car as standard, so you still get that kind of leatherette seating inside, your multimedia infotainment screen up there with the rotary dial. It's still got things such as the 18-inch wheels, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, albeit it's wired, cruise control, head-up display, reverse camera. That's all standard on the car, so that's what you get as standard. But that's prime line. You move up to this one, which is the mid-range exclusive line, and that's 33,495 before any options. Remember what I said, this two-tone paint finish, this is 1,500 quid option, so just bear that in mind. And then sitting at the top of the range is the Makoto, which is £35,895. So that's your three. But yeah, you can buy the battery electric one a little bit less than this. But this might just be the answer to a lot of people's fears if you don't fancy going fully electric at first. So what else might you consider instead of an MX-30 R-EV? Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because it is such a unique little car. It was very hard for me to start thinking about competition for this section. Toyota CHR, Renault Captur, maybe, but they are, dare I suggest, more practical and more conventional in some respects in terms of their small compact crossovers, albeit offering very good hybrid drivetrains. So maybe that's two cars that you might also consider, but then they're much better in terms of practicality. So you're maybe not going to consider the MX-30 if you're looking at them. So would you then look at a small, sort of like a compact hatchback, I don't know, like a Mini Cooper, for instance, the new Mini Cooper? Potentially, but of course you don't get that with a hybridised drivetrain. It's electric or it's internal combustion engine, that's it. And this is a bit bigger and it's not quite as quick, so therefore maybe that's not the ideal competition either. Many do have the new Aceman coming out this year, which is a compact 5-door crossover that sits above the Cooper in the range but not as big as the Countryman, and in terms of its price it's going to start from mid-30,000s. Maybe that car, but then it's all electric. You don't get it as a hybrid drivetrain at all. You'd have to go full electric for that, so maybe not that. DS automobiles, the DS4 E-Tents, a bit like the Toyota and the Renault Captur, a bit more conventional looking. Maybe the little DS3, that's the only one that I can think of in terms of its size, compact nature, quite different, it's quite luxurious inside, you know, but again, it's either sort of like hybrid or full electric. So that's probably the closest, I think, when it comes to competition for the MX-30 R-EV. But like I said, it's not an easy car to pigeonhole. But that's the point. I don't think you should. The MX-30 R-EV is a great car made better, in my view. No, it's not going to be everyone's cup of sake, but the world would be a boring place if we all liked the same things, in my book. What Mazda have done is they've taken all the great bits about the electric version of the MX-30, you know, the quirky styling, the fabulous interior, the sustainability message of it, and they've removed a lot of the criticisms of the car, you know, the limited range, you know, all that other stuff that's attributed to sort of like people's thoughts towards electric vehicles. And they've come up with something that's quite unique and really rather different. Now, whether or not that is your bag or not, it still should be applauded, the fact that it exists. And it was the bravery of Mazda that came up with it in the first place. Thank you for watching another new car review on House of Cars. As always, as I say, I know I've got some subscribers, but I really would like an awful lot more. So if you're not a subscriber, please consider becoming one, because it would mean an awful lot to me. And once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you get notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Tell your friends about it as well, because they might want to subscribe to the channel as well. If you're into cars, that'd be a great thing to advise them to do. Now, also, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think? Am I absolutely losing my marbles? Should I have got stronger specs? Is that the problem? You know, it's not your cup of tea at all. Do you have one? Do you have the electric one? What made you buy it? Why did you choose it? Are you annoyed at the limited range electric one? Would you have bought this one instead? All of those things, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you're a bit of a fan of the old Instagram, I am there as well, so at House of Cars 1973, so if you want to give me a follow there, that will help the channel too. And remember, whether or not it's new cars or it's old cars, whether it's small cars or big cars, slow cars or fast cars, you're going to find them all here in the House of Cars. Thank you for watching, thank you for supporting the channel. I'll see you again soon.